All right, FightHype.com here with my man, strength and conditioning coach Alex Ariza. Alex, it was fight week. Manny Pacquiao versus Adrien Broner. I have to have a sit down with you for any Manny Pacquiao fight. So here we are again, one more time, 40 years old. What do you think's gonna happen?
You know, you get that question all the time, but unfortunately, we're not really privy to what's going on in the camp. I think with Manny, I think he's pretty much been doing the same thing over and over and over for the last few years. So we don't really expect too much, anything different out of him. But I think the big question really lies on Broner. I mean, which Broner are we going to see? I mean, obviously there's been a lot about his training and the seriousness that he's taking it and bringing in Kevin Cunningham. And you know, it's just one of those things. It's anything that you say that this is going to happen, that is really, you're either speculating, you're guessing, we just don't know. But, you know, the truth is, I mean, is really going to be, you know, who really had a better camp. So, I mean, for me, all focus would be on Broner and see what he did and the changes he made, whether or not that's going to play the deciding factor of the fight.
Well, let me ask you real quick, since you do have, just a little bit of knowledge on strength and conditioning. You know, again, I hear what you're saying, like you don't really know unless you're in camp and you can see everything that's going on. But Broner's put out, you know, some little nuggets. He mentioned that he's doing 3-a-days in camp. When, as a strength and conditioning coach, when you hear, you know, 3-a-days, is that a good thing? Is that a bad thing?
I think the question is it hyperbole or is it really true? So that's the question. If he's really training like that, then no, I'm not a fan of that kind of training. I think we've seen, especially back in the day when I did work with MMA guys, and that was part of the routine, and we saw, you know, more of a decline in performance and either overtraining or, you know, a lot of those kind of factors that came into play with that kind of a training program. With Manny, on the other hand, being 40 years old, it's more difficult in the sense that you're not going to train him the same way that we trained him back when we had him. You're going to do so many things different. The question is, does the team have the experience? Do they have the credentials, the success of training guys at that level or at that age, and how to get them to perform at their maximum potential, especially at 40 years old. So those are really all those million-dollar questions that, you know, only going to be answered on Saturday night. So, but yeah, there's a lot that goes into training an older fighter, just as much as there's a lot to going in as in training a fighter like Adrien Broner and getting him to get back to that full potential that we used to see how he used to perform at. So it's really a question of who has the better camp, who has the more experienced, educated, credentialed camp, you know, the guys with success. So those are really for guys like us, the coach, the training coaches, the diet guys. Those are the things that we look at on the other side, as far as aside from the boxing part.
Yeah. When you do, you know, hear things like that, you know, I'm doing 3-a-days and this, that, and the other. Just going into the fight, like obviously the weigh-in is coming up tomorrow. Are there things that, you know, maybe being on the other side when you're looking at the opponent, are there things that you're looking for that might tip you off? I mean, obviously, you know, when they step on the scale, you might be looking at their lips to see if they're... You
know, I think that's all indicative of cutting weight.
Right.
So it's not like that's going to sit there and have a, you know, a tail. I remember there was when Maidana fought Mayweather, and one of the girls, I guess, that works for Ring TV, the guy with the girl with the ponytail, dude, with the whatever guy, he says, you know, I have more muscle than Maidana, you know. So that's the kind of thinking that sits there, and you think just because Maidana wasn't, you know, massively ripped or you know, muscular, but look at the performance and look at the training that he went through and the details that we went through to get him prepared for a Mayweather fight. So to sit there and look at him and say, well, this guy's more muscular, this guy, it's really not going to tell you anything. So you're not going to look at something and all of a sudden there's going to be that sign that says, oh, that's why that's going to happen.
Right.
I mean, you've seen me with Julio, I mean, crawling onto the scale, and then the next time we have, you know, great performances. So I just think when people start looking at you at the scale, however I do as well. I'll look at a fighter that when he gets on the scale, and I start looking for the little things that I'm looking for. It's just there's just not one key thing that you look at. But I think in general, you look at all those things, that can give you a little bit of a clue of how well the training camp went. But I've seen him talk, and I've seen what he's doing. He looks prepared. Doesn't look any different than he has in the past. The problem is that everybody says the same thing. This is the best training camp I've ever had. So and so's never hit harder. He's the same of the old. I mean, it just goes back and forth. Either it's hype or it's legitimate. But we're only going to find out on Saturday night.
Have you had a chance to see any of the videos this week or in the weeks leading up to the fight of Manny? I mean, I guess more specifically this week though, because I've been to a lot of Manny Pacquiao fights, and not to say that he was grumpy or anything like that, but for this particular fight, it seems like he's happier than I've ever seen him before. I mean, he's joking. He's doing more talking than I've ever heard him talk before. I mean,
that could be under the promotional part. Like, hey, you can't just go hide in the closet where there's still 10,000 people that are sitting outside the door waiting just to get a peek. He has to start playing the role. I mean, he's a 40-year-old fighter that's. There's questions about his performances and what he's going to do, what he's going to bring to the table. So he has to fuel this as well. He has to fuel this fight. So he has to be more presentable. He has to be more accessible than he has been in the past. So as far as the training and stuff like that, I don't look at it and go, oh yeah, he's happy or he's this and that. I just see the same thing over and over and over again, and that always worries me. When I see him doing that, when I see him doing drills on cement. I mean, you see the lack of experience, and
you mean like when he was running at the park in the morning?
Yeah, and then he's doing foot drills on concrete, and he has a history of having some foot problems.
Oh, I forgot about that.
Yeah, so those are things that when you have an experienced team and a successful unit around you, those are things they wouldn't normally do as conditioning coaches, like. Myself, Mamo, real guy, we look at that and you go like, why, is it just for the cameras? Or, is this really how he's training? But I'm not seeing things that I think for professionals like ourselves, we're not seeing the things that we would do for a 40-year-old fighter, for instance. So not seeing those things and not seeing the focus on that, that sometimes is a concern, and I think for us that's what closes the gap between will he come out and be this whole new different person that they say that he's going to be, or are we going to see the same 400 punch output and this thing go to a decision?
It's actually funny that you mentioned the 400 punch output, because that's something that I know Al Bernstein brought up the other day. He said he was looking at the stats of both fighters' last 5 fights, Broner's and Manny's, and he said Broner actually has a better punch output average per round than Manny does, which is kind of crazy for me to hear, because everyone, when they talk about Broner, they say the knock is he doesn't let his hands go.
He doesn't let his hands go.
Right.
But we also have to remember that there was a time when Broner did let his hands go. If we remember that Maidana Broner fight, that was that was no walk in the park fight. I mean, we saw a Broner. I mean, as bad as it ended up, he was in there. He took some tremendous shots. He got up off the canvas. He fought right back, and boom, he was right back in it. 10, 11, and 12 all over again. So he was strong. So if that's what I'm saying, it's hard to say, just to say that Broner's just a shot fighter. Sometimes it takes a fighter to bring out that motivation, to bring out, that interest, back, or that love-hate for the fight, for the game again, or maybe he's sitting there looking at the reality of it. Man, I beat this guy. I train hard. I let my hands go. Letting your hands go against a Manny Pacquiao that throws 1,000 punches back in the day was suicide. Letting your hand go against a Manny Pacquiao that barely breaks 400 punches in 12 rounds. Now the odds increases. So Broner could see that. Alexander's a great trainer, you know. I mean, I'm sure these guys are all looking at that saying, hey, this isn't a guy who just, you know, is letting fireballs fly out, you know, round after round after round. He's more conservative. He sits down a little bit more. He's not as defensive. He doesn't move around as much as he used to. You know, so.
Oh, that's your phone.
I'm sorry, can you pause that?
Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry. I thought we were gonna turn this.
All right, we're back. Alex had to answer the phone. Very important person still. Yes, he does still get top tier clients. So.
Yeah. So, you know, this is one of those fights that so many questions lie on. And not just that, but the future of not only Manny Pacquiao, but the future of Adrien Broner. I mean, if Manny gets this guy out of there, the sky's the limit. You know, there's all kinds of there's things. This thing goes 12 rounds. That Pacquiao Mayweather fades away because I don't care how many times they fight. 10 out of 10 times, you're not going to beat Floyd Mayweather in a decision fight. So, he has to take some risks. He has to take some chances, and you know, you have to ask yourself at 40 years old, is he you know, want to put it all out there like that? Broner, on the other hand, is in the same boat. You know, he can't go to another 12-round decision with Pacquiao. He probably won't get it. But if he steps up and he does what he's supposed to do and he shows the way he's been training, and something big happens, man, he's right where he wanted to be, which is making that big money, and you know, he becomes that draw. He's the guy that beat Manny Pacquiao.
Yeah, when fighters do go from throwing like 1,000 punches to 400, or when their activity level drops, is there a particular reason for that? Is that a conditioning issue? Is it I mean, don't get me wrong. I know when guys get knocked out, then that they become gun shy, and that can be a problem. But
there's walls that I think that in my experience that fighters have a tendency sometimes to. It's a mental block. You know, it's a condition as well. You know, the fear of exhaustion. It's a phobia. So your training will sit there. Good training will get you past that. Will get you to be able to get over that wall. I think we saw that with Maidana. We've seen that with Chavez Jr. We saw that with you know, even Benavidez. You know, guys that, you know, your training will give you that confidence to know that you're going to let your hands go round after round after round, and you're going to have that again. You're going to have that, not only the confidence but the ability to recover and to go out there and do it again. So I always think that, you know, your strength and conditioning program, your nutrition program is the most invaluable part of it, because that is what's going to give you that confidence. Your boxing is that part of the game where they sharpen the tools, the game plan, all those, but you don't really use that as the compass of your conditioning. So yeah, you know, when you see an output go from like Manny go from, you know, 1,000 punches to 400. There's a big question that you have to ask yourself. You know, why? So yeah, there is an issue with that for sure.
Yeah. How much do you think either guy has really changed since you last encountered them? I mean, obviously you were in the opposite corner when Maidana fought Broner, and what was the last fight you were with Manny? Was it the Marquez fight?
Well, the last fight that I actually worked, I didn't work. I mean, I was with Manny when he got knocked out, but they had decided to. They decided to take the strength and conditioning, and pretty much my team, myself and Terry, kind of were something that they were going to not use for that fight. I thought I think there was a little bit. They wanted to make it a Freddie Roach versus Nacho Beristain and a Manny Pat, and you know, they wanted to just leave it like that. And, but you know, what most people failed to see was that there was a huge part of that was involved with Marquez, and that was, you know, the addition of Memo of Heredia.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I can tell you, gosh, man, looking back on that, you know, watching those 24/7 and those back in those days was an event at Manny's house. We'd all gather, you know, to watch, and seeing the addition of Memo and watching what he was doing, I remember, you know, kept pushing that my agenda as well. I was like, you know, we need to take this shit serious. You know, he's not fucking around. This is, I mean, although Memo and I have two different systems and two different ways of doing it, the fundamentals of what our backgrounds was being used, and I could see it. And when I started with Manny in 07, 08, that was, you know, that was our secret to our success, that we were using science, that we were using the knowledge of exercise and nutrition. We were using cutting edge techniques while everybody else was still doing the old school stuff. So that gave us that advantage when we were fighting, when we were starting to move from 26 to 30 to 35 to from 35 right to 47, back down to 40, up to 52. You know, you see what I'm saying? So the blueprint was there, you know, and then now to see, you know, that variable being taken out, and now all of a sudden, now I'm seeing it on the my counterpart, which is Memo, seeing him doing that with Marquez. It was, I mean, you remember those. I mean, Freddie and I were going head to head about the whole exercise, the whole strength and conditioning part of Manny's training, and you know, I could only push my agenda so far, and you know, they chose to make it about them and about Freddie and Nacho and that little rivalry, and the results were the results.
How much I mean, yeah, obviously they weren't good results for Manny, but how much does that play into the camp, you know, and going into the fight when you have a team? Because I know that, you know, Manny wasn't with Freddie, or Freddie wasn't with Manny for his last fight, the Lucas Matisse fight, but obviously they've kind of brought him back in. And I know Manny, throughout the promotion of this, he's made it a point to stress that Boo Boy's the head trainer. You know, he wants him to get his shine and everything like that. And it looks like Freddie is kind of taking a backseat, and he's okay with that. But is that really the case, or could there still be some, you know, some animosity going on? Like,
well, we only know what they read. You know, I believe in if it's not broke, why fix it? So whether or not Boo Boy is qualified to train a Manny Pacquiao is not really the point. If that's who Manny wanted, and you know, that they were successful in the way they did it. So I don't know. I know that they weren't happy about Freddie, you know, being back. They thought it was going to be a toxic situation. You know, personalities were conflicting and things like that. So, you know, but if that's what Manny wants, it's ideal, bro. We have to put all that aside, and you have to do what's best for the fighter, and what the fighter wants. And you know, maybe he feels comfortable at Wildcard, and he likes to train there, and that's his comfort zone. And so it's not like you're gonna say, hey, we're just gonna use your gym and not you.
Right.
So,
right.
so you know.
Yeah.
It kind of, but.
But can't that be confusing though when you have like two and it's not just Manny. Adrien actually has two trainers too.
Too many chiefs.
Yeah.
Not enough Indians, you know. But if everybody plays a role, look at boxing needs to be just like any other mainstream sport. You know, I've worked with soccer players, football, basketball. There's a lot of trainers that have a lot of different specialties. You can't expect one. It's like saying, do you think Belichick gives a fuck who's feeding Tom Brady?
Right.
Shit.
Or even with you have offensive coordinator, defensive coordinator.
They don't. You know, it's about making the athlete the best of it that you can make them. You know, above and beyond what people expect what they think their own potential is. So you have to work together as a team. You know, there shouldn't be bosses. You know, everybody has a specific job to do, and they should focus and do on that and spend their time doing that. Worrying about what this guy is doing, worrying who's doing mitts this day, it just creates a bad and negative environment. So, and you know, who's going to want to take credit at the end of this? You know, that's at the end of the day, that's what it boils down to in boxing. You know, who wants to get the credit? Yeah. Who wants this? Who wants that? You know.
You know, when you are dealing with that type of situation, particularly when you've been with a fight like you guys were with Manny. You know, going way back, and a lot changed over time. And you know, a lot of times fighters, when they get to a certain level, they want to start taking a little more control. And you know, they they might not want to listen to things that they were being told to do before. Is that hard to, because I mean, like you said, you have to do whatever he wants and you have to put that aside, but at the same time you guys are still like, you have to instill discipline. So is that hard to balance when you are trying to instill discipline, but you've got someone who's saying, hey man, I'm the fucking boss, so I'm gonna do what I want to do?
You know, I believe that some of the fighters that I have worked with, whether, I mean, even at the height, even, you know, take for instance even Floyd stuff, they know what they want, but at the same time, they're going to respect that outside opinion and say, hey, look, and then you give the reasoning behind it, the rationale behind it. So yeah, they are still the boss, and with Floyd it was a whole different story, because at the end of the day, I'm 49-0. So
what are you going to tell me? Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. How are you going to argue with that?
Right.
So, but when you see a fighter like Manny, who we could see steadily decline, then, you know, at that point, like myself and Tara were saying, these are the reasons why. This is what's happening. And unfortunately, you know, you have people that are around that will, instead of sit there and support the idea and say, hey, listen, clearly there's a problem. If this was any other sport and Manny was making that, or any other team was declining like that, you're fucking fired, you're out.
Right.
Whoever's running that show. It's time to bring in and figure out what's the problem is. So, but unfortunately in boxing, it's not like that. Any real agent, any real management company, anyone who is really invested in an elite blue chip athlete like that, after the first, you know, less than impressive performance and the decline, and the numbers don't lie. So once you see those numbers start to suffer, and you start to see those performances, and you see that, there was time to make a change, and there was a time to make a change a long time ago. You know, when I had mentioned, you know, hey, let's bring in some new, you know, more high intensity mitt guys. Let's get some younger guys that are going to move around. Start bringing out instead of the same redundant, you know, spice things up, change. You know, but it was taken and obviously was taken wrongly, and then, you know, the parting of the ways parted. But it's only for us because as coaches like myself or Terry, and we saw that there was a decline. We could see that there was something, and if you look at what that variable was, it was the fact that he was neglecting the strength and conditioning. He was neglecting the dieting that Terry and I had been developing since day one. You know, he was starting to get away, and unfortunately, people were sitting there, you know, going along with, you know, what he was. Oh, okay, yeah, you don't have to do that, or you don't have to do that. You don't get the support that you're supposed to get. Where a real you know, a real manager, coach would come in and say, hey, listen, we're looking like shit here. So we need to get back to what we were doing when we were winning. Yeah. And let's not take out the fact that there was a fear factor in those days. You know, Manny was a little guy, and all of a sudden he was starting to get thrown in with these big dudes. So there was a fear factor there for Manny that was like, you know, I got to start doing what these guys say, and because this is real business. You know, we're going from, you know, 26 to 35 to 47. I mean, Oscar De La Hoya was still dangerous. I mean, Miguel Cotto, Ricky Hatton. You know, I mean, Antonio Margarito. I mean, we were talking about some, you know, some dangerous guys out there.
He actually brought that Margarito fight up during the Grand Right when we were talking to him in the VIP room. He was talking about how much of a tough fight that was, and it really took a toll.
You know, he threw 1,200 and something punches in that fight. You know?
Wow.
That's conditioning, bro. That's confidence in your head and in your ability and your physical ability to know, man, I'm going out there, I'll throw all night long and do what, yeah. But then when you go from 1,200 and then you go all the way down to 6, 5, 4, I mean, you have to, from a rational professional standpoint, you have to sit there and you have to analyze those numbers, and you have to come up with, you know, with a solution. Because like I said, if it was a mainstream sport, any other sport, everybody's out. Yeah, we got to bring in a new thing. So Terry and I, we could only push our agenda so far, and we could only continually have that conversation with him, Manny. You know, at some point, there was a thing, you know, between is it God gifted or is it science? You know, and you know, during the Marquez thing, it was, the science of the work that we did was, completely ignored by, and almost in ignorance, saying, God is going to be in charge. God couldn't care less who wins these fights. You have to respect the science. You have to adopt. You have to be innovative, because if we don't, somebody else will. And Marquez did, and we paid the ultimate price for that fight.
Wow. Well, I mean, that being said, I mean, again, I know it's hard to really know what's going on in the camps. I mean, both teams look like they're saying the right things. Adrian's focused. Manny's looking like he's 20. That's what you expect to hear.
Yeah.
But having said that, do you envision the fight playing out a certain way? Are we still going to see Manny doing what he normally does, his angles and this, that, and the other? Or is there going to be some trick up his sleeve? Or is Broner going to let his hands go?
I think history has a weird way of reminding us, sometimes painfully. So if we don't look at history and we don't go back and look at the changes that we should make, it will remind us, like I said, either painfully, one way or the other. We'll be reminded of that, of what took place. So, and then on Broner, I mean, is Broner going to fight the same way he fought Mikey? I mean,
Jesse Vargas too.
Mikey's a big puncher. He really didn't. Adrien took a lot of shots from, and he absorbed him. He looked and he fought well. So, do I expect Manny to have that just one punch blast out power all of a sudden? From it's not going to come from anywhere. But if you show me some, like you said, snippets of hey, they're going through this whole extensive new, they brought in a whole new conditioning, a real conditioning team, a credible, credentialed, successful, conditioning team, and say, oh wow, yeah, their approach is different. They're really taking it serious.
Like there was a reason for.
Exactly. So that would make me say, hey, all of a sudden there's some changes. But if you're going to do the same thing that you did way back when, again, history has a funny way of sometimes reminding us of the mistakes that we made and that we didn't change. Broner, on the other hand, is a young guy.
He can probably still make some of those mistakes because he's younger.
He's younger, right. And with Mikey, fighting with Broner and Mikey, I understood it more because Mikey's very technical. He knows exactly what he's doing. He's very methodical and timing and what he does. He doesn't waste anything. So Broner, that was a chess. Manny wasn't never the most technical fighter to begin with.
Is he more of like a reflex fighter?
Yeah, he's off balance. He's high energy. He's high volume. It just comes at every angle. And that's, I think, what made us suffer in the Marquez fight, because Marquez sometimes he really couldn't get set because Manny was bing, 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 bing. You never really can get set with him because here comes five more, here comes five more, here comes five more. And it continues after, and you almost get broken down morally. The morale of the fight is like, Jesus, at what point, when is this thing gonna, slow down? But now, when you start throwing less punches, you start giving the other guy opportunities, and he starts to see holes in the game. He starts to see holes in the technique. Broner's he's not where he is today because he got lucky.
Yeah, no, Broner can fight.
Broner can fight. He's a smart guy, and he sees those openings, and he's got quick hands. And, so...
So you expect a competitive fight?
I'm hoping for a competitive fight. I think just like anybody else.
You don't want to see a blowout.
I mean, I don't want to see Manny get knocked out either.
Right.
I don't want to see him get hurt.
Right.
And I'm hoping that that the outside distractions that happen that's Broner's going through doesn't affect him. And but again, it's all hyperbole until until we get to see what really happens. But I'm excited for it. I think. I mean, if anyone's going to shine and has the moment to steal that opportunity, it's Broner. And Manny, on the other hand, I don't see anything he's doing different to show the public. I mean, everybody that's here, we're here because we're fans, and for support, and But to sit there as a coach and as somebody in the business, I don't see anything different. And I hope that I hope I'm wrong, but I just don't see I don't see him surrounding himself with well, put bluntly, with the team that has the experience and success to really take him to teach him and train him like a 40-year-old. They don't have that kind of experience or credentials or a history of doing it. So I mean, you can't just make it up. Like you can't just say, okay, well, Manny's 40 now, so well, what do we just train him the same way? I mean, does that make sense to you?
No.
You can't. It's a different athlete. He has to be trained differently. He has to be fed differently. He has recovery has to be different. You know, the risk versus the reward of exercise have to be different. You know.
But like part of me still feels like, okay, so even though he may not be, it just seems like there's an extra motivation because I know he really wants that Floyd Mayweather rematch, and it feels like almost that's the reason why he wanted to fight Broner, because he was like a little mini Floyd Mayweather.
Well,
so
I don't know about as long as I've known Manny, he's never really chosen anything.
well, come on, he's out of that situation though.
Say, so he's out of that situation. This might be, obviously might be a different situation.
Yeah.
But I think there's all kinds of fighters out there that wouldn't create as much of a problem that Adrien could create. Yeah, he's a smaller guy, a smaller welterweight. So, but yeah, you're right. I think this is that road to that big fight again. You know, and I think whoever's investing the money and putting up the money for this, you're hoping that he does what he's supposed to do to get that fight. But if this thing lags out to 12 rounds, you're not going to find anybody out in the streets except hardcore, Pacquiao fans that are going to spend $80 to watch him get beat by Floyd again.
Oh, and yeah, and I definitely agree with that.
I mean, really, how many rounds did he win in that fight?
Well, come on, man. You know he had a bad shoulder.
Oh yeah. So I mean, you gotta accept responsibility. You know, you can just say, hey man, it wasn't that was. It's better that way because then you don't make fools of the public, and you're not really. I mean, you're not fooling us. You're not fooling the professionals in the sport. You're not going to find one trainer, one conditioning coach, one mitt guy. You're not going to find any one real person or a physical therapist, a real orthopedist, a doctor who's going to say Manny fought from the 4th round with a torn rotator cuff.
Well, I can find one.
Yeah,
His name is Freddie.
Yeah.
But outside of that.
Most people that has even had a slight shoulder injury,
yeah.
You can't wipe your ass.
Yeah.
Let alone throw a bunch of punches, throw your arms up.
Lift your arm up, yeah.
So, let's not really kid ourselves. Right. It was in his night. Maybe bad game plan. Too much running of the mouth, not enough training, on the team's part. Manny has always been an animal when it comes to training, and he follows directions. He's generally pretty disciplined. So, you can't blame the fighter. The fighter only does what he's trained to do and what he's capable and what he's been trained and his capabilities of doing during the fight are. So Manny just looked lost. Like I told you, that he just looked lost to me. Had this been a fight 5 years ago,
yeah,
could have been a different story. But you're not gonna if tomorrow night is really it's really an epic moment, man, because everything is gonna cascade from that.
Yeah.
If he gets Broner out of there and he's impressive and he shows us those angles and that footwork again, and he wraps off 800, 900 punches, even if he does something like that, then you're talking about a different story.
Right.
But if we got two guys, one guy throws 500, the other guy throws 400, who do you know that's going to spend $100 to watch Manny fight Floyd again?
Right. I don't know.
You're not.
Yeah.
Because it's going to be the same thing 10 out of 10 times. You're not going to beat Floyd at that game. So you're going to have to show up with something different.
Yeah.
And if that's the game plan to fight Floyd after this, which I'm assuming, we're all anticipating, we're all hoping for that.
Well, I think that this particular fight is actually the fight that both guys need.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Like I think where both of them are at this point in their careers, like, is do or die.
Right.
And you're going to find out a lot about,
who's got what
Right.
at the end of it, man.
Right.
This is that fight. That's what I'm saying. Once all the talking is done, you hear. It becomes, you lose credibility when you start saying, oh, we're going to knock him out in the first round. We're going to do this in the first. I mean, it's just not, it's ridiculous. Let's just say, man, you put all that shit aside and you start focusing on just getting this guy ready, getting him the best physical shape, getting him sharp, ready to rock and roll. And he's got to be mentally prepared. Adrian's got to be mentally prepared to take the same kind of chances Saturday night that he took against Maidana when he fought Maidana. Because he didn't just, when he got dropped twice, he didn't quit. He came back and started firing. He got right back in the fight and showed what he was made of. If we see that Broner, then we got a fight. Then we got a good fight. But if we see Manny all of a sudden just launching, boom, 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 boom. I mean, he's moving around and he freezes you. And that's what Manny does with that speed and those angles. He freezes you. So if he gets frozen all night long, then maybe maybe you can make the argument for another Mayweather fight. But I think this has to end up in a knockout. In order for it to draw a legitimate case for a rematch, it has to. I think, anyway.
You think you can get it?
Manny?
Yeah.
Sure. See, the thing with Manny is, man, he catches you when you don't. It's the ones that you don't see with him, man. But I definitely think he's still got crack, man. He doesn't have that power that he used to have before, but he can still punch. So
he seemed real excited after that Lucas Matisse. I mean, again, I know it's Matisse and
doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. That's good. That's good for here. From a fighter standpoint, that's good for your. It's still there. It's like being in a slump, not hitting a home run after 30 games. All of a sudden, bam! You rope one out. You're like, okay, it's there again. Never leaves you.
Wow.
You got to have somebody bring it out and you help you find it. You just hope the people that are surrounding him have the capability of bringing that out in him again.
Yeah.
That's what we have to really hope for.
I can't wait, man. I'm getting kind of pumped up for this shit. It's like right around the corner.
Yeah, because you never know. It could be real. I mean, look, I always hate looking back on things, but when we got that Maidana Broner fight, we were a 6-1 underdog. We had no shot. That was Broner. Man, we were a stepping stone without a doubt.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. We had Maidana had just got beat by Alexander. He just got beat by Davon. He was retiring. Semi-retired. Came back and look what happened.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying? Anything can happen if the training and the people that are around you, the system, the support system, the level of experience of your team, the success of the team, the background, the education, all of those things all come together, man. You can make a whole different kind of fighter. All of a sudden, nobody expected that from Maidana. And I can guarantee you there's not a person in the world that expected him to fight Mayweather the way he fought Mayweather in that first fight.